Okay, looks good.
Yeah, ready to go.
All right. For those of you who have joined us online, we're going to have a brief ceremony before we officially begin this meeting. Like to turn it over perhaps to the mayor, who I see is online here with us.
I am. Can you hear me?
We certainly can.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. My apologies. My internet is down, and there may be a barking in the background. I'll try to get through it, but we'll do the best we can. First of all, I want to acknowledge and thank my good friend, Nate Sumter, for 3 terms on the Zoning Commission, and prior to that, on the Zoning Board of Appeals. You know, Nate put his heart and soul into the Zoning Commission, working hard to help make Norwalk the best it can possibly be. You know, zoning issues are very challenging, as those of you who are currently on the Zoning Commission all know all too well. And sometimes it seems that no matter what you do, somebody has an issue. But you stick to it, and you implement and you rule on the zoning regulations based on your knowledge and experience. And I know that Nate spent many, many, many hours at City Hall, after hours, during the day, bringing himself up to speed on issues related to what was coming up next on the Zoning Commission. And as I said, he really, really put his heart and soul into it. Now, I've had the occasion to walk with Nate down in his neighborhood, and I call him the mayor of Narrowmack Avenue in that area, because everybody down there knows Nate. He knows everybody. He knows them by name. He knows what they do. He knows when they're home. He knows when they're not home. He kind of protects the neighborhood. So he is truly, in my estimation, a Norwalk hero. And so I have a proclamation to read for Nate. And whereas Nate Sumter, a longtime Norwalker and married to his lovely wife, Linda Sumter, together with their family, have been Norwalkers for many years. Nate has always been an advocate for the residents of the city. And whereas Nate was appointed to the Zoning Board of Appeals in 2005 and served 1 5-year term until his appointment to the Zoning Commission in 2011, and then reappointed in 2014 by me, and it was an honor to do that. I served with Nate when I was on the Zoning Commission in 2012, and I learned a lot from him. Nate was elected chairman by his fellow commissioners in 2016 and served in that capacity for 3 years. And whereas Nate did a remarkable job as chairman, he has always made himself available for questions and solutions. He was very devoted to his position. And whereas Nate, a leader, has always committed himself to work with our citizens, a champion for affordable housing and equitable planning, ensuring fairness and equality for all, striving to make a difference in the lives of each and every one who presented their request to the Zoning Commission. And whereas Nate Sumter, a person who cares, a person of the highest integrity, and very devoted, it was an honor to work with him for several terms. Now, therefore, I, Harry W. Rilling, Mayor of the City of Norwalk, do hereby proclaim Thursday, September 3rd, as Nate Sumter Day in Norwalk, and in doing so, call upon family, friends, members of the Common Council, and all city employees to join me in recognizing his hard work, expertise, dedication, and devotion to the City of Norwalk. In witness whereof, I have set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Norwalk to be affixed this 3rd day of August, 2020. And I believe, Steve, the proclamation you have may say August 3rd. We will have to change that if you still have that. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was muted. Yeah, the proclamation says August 3rd.
Okay, we will change that to September 3rd because obviously, unbelievably so, we are now in September.
Well, Nate, congratulations. This is certainly well-deserved. You made us all look good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I've always believed, thank all of you. Thank all of my fellow commissioners. I just want to thank God for allowing me to just to be here today. And I have a special big thank you to my wife, who's always been there by my side as she is now. And I kind of always believe too much is given, you know, much is required. And I'm just so thankful that I've been able to make a difference in this great city of Norwalk. And just to be able to work with a fine group of people, starting with our chair, to the staff, starting with Steve and all of my fellow commissioners. And I gotta say, it really was a pleasure. Some of you I had known before I even got on the commission, and then to be able to serve with such a diverse group of people, it really, truly was. It was an honor. And I look forward to just seeing many of you. It's a little different doing this like this, but I also know that I was fortunate enough to just celebrate my mom's birthday, and she still lives alone. And we did something very similar to what we're doing here. She lives in Stanford, and it is her 98th birthday. So what a blessing that has been.
Wow.
Yes, yes, yeah. And I try to visit her as much as possible. And unlike me, she's still in her right mind.
Right. Nate,
Yes.
we know that you can go on and on. I'm just going to remind the commissioners that when we end our meeting,
Yeah,
we have another Zoom address,
yeah.
and we're all going to meet up with Nate for a Zoom cocktail party.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thank all of you so much. And it's a pleasure. And I'll see you soon.
Okay, Nate.
You know, on that
See you
Zoom,
soon.
that old Zoom, huh? Okay. All right.
It was
Thank
nice
you.
to meet you all, and thank you for all that you've done. And, you know, I got a little break every time you all had your meeting. So thank you for that.
And I hope that the other guests stay later on. Thank you. Then it's good to see all of you, Liz,
Okay.
and as well as everyone else. And like they said, I'm going to make this one short and sweet. So I'll see y'all. How will I know when your meeting is over?
I'll give you a call.
Okay. All right. I'll be near the phone.
Okay,
Okay.
Nate. We'll talk with you
Okay.
later.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care.
Mayor, thank you very much.
Oh,
Take care.
Yeah,
real
thank you.
pleasure. And to the
My
mayor,
pleasure.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for everything, Mayor. See you guys soon.
Thank you, Nate. You're a good man.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're a good
I
mayor.
always call you Linda's husband.
Yeah.
I always look at you as Linda's husband.
And I always answer to that. We just celebrated 45 years of marriage, y'all.
You're a smart man.
Yeah.
You are a smart man.
Okay.
All right, we've got a meeting to run.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Congratulations, Nate. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Thanks all of you.
All right.
And I'm going to call the meeting of the Zoning Commission to order. Steve, would you call the roll, please?
Sure, and I'll just read off the names as I see them on the screen. Mr. Schulman,
Here.
Mr. Witherspoon,
Here.
Mr. Rowena,
Here.
Mr. Mancini,
Present.
Mr. Johnson,
Here.
Mr. Cantor,
Here.
Ms. Wells,
Here.
Mr. Goldstein,
Here.
and I thought I saw Stephanie before.
Yeah, she's here.
I'm here eating dinner.
That's why I don't see you. There you are. Miss Thomas was here. I think I got everybody.
Okay. The first order of business is to let you know that we had a late cancellation. Item 4-20R and 5-20 SPR. The Wall Street Recap Associates for Wall Street Place have withdrawn themselves from this evening's meeting. I presume that that'll be rescheduled, and when it is, it'll be advertised in the meeting advertisement. So anyone who's here for those two items, we will not be hearing them this evening. Although you're welcome to stay, you may wish to do something else. We have two public hearings this evening. To remind those of you who may not have attended our public hearings before, the firm that is heading the project will first be given an opportunity to explain the project, during which time commissioners may ask questions, but the public may not. Once that initial presentation is completed, the public will be given an opportunity to speak. You get only one opportunity, so if you have a lot to say, make sure you get it all in, because you won't have a second opportunity. After the public has spoken, again, commissioners may continue to have questions that they'll be able to ask. Again, the firm that's making the presentation will have an opportunity to respond to any questions that have been raised by the public. All right, with that, we're going to reopen the public hearing 3-20 SP/1-20 CAM that is being continued from our last meeting. That is 310 Wilson Avenue, Webb Construction. With that, I'd ask Attorney Succi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I hope everyone is well. Thank you for having us back this evening. Just as a quick recap, we were before you several times. The last time was August 12th. And by that time, we had made our complete presentation, answered your questions. The hearing was held open, as you may recall, for two reasons. One was for us to conduct salinity tests that were requested. And the second was to prepare a design protocol budget for the staff suggested removal of the 50-plus-year-old accessway that exists on the property. So as you know, we had provided the salinity test to staff with a letter from Matt Pop. 3 testing locations for sampling were used, and the sampling was taken on August 13th. The analyses were processed by Phoenix Environmental Labs, and then Mr. Pop, who was on the line today, in case you have questions of him, he explained those in a letter dated August 24th, which has been submitted. As we anticipated, that which is emitted by processed aggregate does not release high levels of saline, so the question of salinity, we believe, has been thoroughly and scientifically resolved. The second question that was raised, as I indicated, staff had suggested the removal of the 50-year-old roadway. And we have provided for you the information that my client developed in terms of the necessary permitting, the process to get the road removed, the design for that. And that permitting process included not only local, but anticipated administrative permits from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, a timeline of approximate timeline of how these different stages and component parts would take. And that also has been submitted to staff. With me this evening, if you have any final questions, are Dean Martin of Grumman Engineering. He is the civil engineer who prepared the plan. Chris Manella, he's also a civil engineer with Webb Construction. Chris was the one that took the sampling and then brought it to Phoenix for analysis. Matt Pop is on the line as well in case you have questions of Matt with respect to the analysis and explanation of what the salinity tests reveal. I think we've answered all of your questions. I don't think there's anything more that's outstanding. Just by way of a refresher, the plan had been revised to incorporate suggestions by DEEP. We have provided all the scientific analysis, which seems to be undisputed as to and other issues. We've provided the budget and timetable and process that you requested, which also includes some concerns that my client still has about unintended consequences, the uncertainty of permitting, and the cost that some of you, if you've read the report from Webb Construction, the cost is rather significant. If you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer them. I don't think it's necessary for me to go over everything that's been presented over the past 4 hearings or the documents that were submitted in our position paper of August 11th. But should you have questions of Matt or Chris or Dean, we're happy to answer those.
Okay, commissioners, any questions at this time?
I'd like to clarify one thing, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. There was a question raised by the Harbor Management Commission about heavy metals, and perhaps they were not aware of the testing that was done that we provided information on at one of the hearings, we believe in the July hearing. Heavy metals were all tested, or excuse me, the aggregate process at 34 Meadow Street was tested for heavy metals, and there's a whole slew of them, as well as PCBs. And all of the testing revealed levels of those naturally occurring heavy metals at levels far below residential standards, even though this is an industrial site, an industrial zone, and there were no PCBs detected at the sampling that was taken on June 30th. Those samplings are required by my client because they provide aggregate to the Department of Transportation, and that sampling and testing is done on a regular and routine basis. And those analyses and information that's provided out of the results of the analysis are provided to DOT. And also I'm told that they are provided to clients of ours should they ask for them. So I wanted to be sure that the Harbor Management Commission was aware of this. I did make Dr. Pinto aware last night because he raised the question, and I suspect that that now is satisfactory to them. And also I wanted to make it clear on the record that that type of testing is also undertaken.
Okay, Galen, do you have a question? You're muted. But I saw your lips moving.
Sorry. Yeah, and you provided to DEEP the additional, the application submitted to DEP for a stormwater general permit, and you provided that to the Harbor Commission?
We have not, because as I've stated in the past, we can't apply for a stormwater general permit until this agency makes its decision. But as I've indicated to Dr. Pinto on record and in correspondence, as soon as that application is submitted, we will certainly provide him with a courtesy copy for his file, as we said we would do. But we can't submit until this commission makes a decision on the application before it.
Other questions for Attorney Suchi?
The Harbor Commission also discussed the option of periodic testing of water runoff from the newly acquired stone aggregate. Is that what you were addressing?
That, Madam Commissioner, yes, that was what I was addressing. We are required to do that on a periodic basis, and that is done for the heavy metals that the Harbor Management Commission expressed concern over. That will continue to be done. And if that is something that the Harbor Management Commission would like periodic information on, I don't suspect that my client would have an objection to that, since it must provide that information to DOT and is provided to clients upon request. So if that's something that this commission deems appropriate, we certainly will do that.
Any questions by staff?
No, I think they've answered all the questions that we've raised. We sent out that report that was given to us to Harbor to kind of get a, background information on, since it's more in their wheelhouse. And it didn't seem like they were concerned with levels of salinity or pH. So we would just, as part of a condition would be to continue, those tests that are currently required by DOT. And
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? If not, let's open it up to the public. Brian? Is there anyone from the public?
If anyone from the public would like to speak, use the raise your hand function. If you're dialed in on a telephone, use the *9 tool. I'm not seeing anyone, Lou.
Okay. Any further questions again by the commissioners?
Are there any questions of anyone for the various consultants who are on the line? Happy to answer them.
No, apparently not. Any final comments, Attorney Suchi?
Well, since there is no objections, there are no comments from the public, there really isn't any need for rebuttal. We stand on the papers that we've submitted in connection with the special permit and coastal area management short form application and all of the subsequent documents, revised plans, reports, and other information that we've provided on our own and at the request of this commission and staff. We believe the application meets the requirements of the special permit, meets the requirements of coastal area management, and we look forward to closing the hearing and hopefully taking action on this application this evening.
Thank you. Okay, this hearing is closed. We'll move on to the second hearing. That's 3-20 CAM 300 Wilson Avenue LLC, a change of use from manufacturing to dry cleaner. Personal service use in the rear of the building. Someone here representing 300 Wilson Avenue?
Yes, Mr. Schulman. Adam Blank, Wofsy, Rosenquist, and Kuryansky on behalf of the applicant 300 Wilson Ave LLC. They are the owner of the already developed property located at 310 Wilson Ave, which abuts Village Creek. The property owners, I think you guys probably know Kevin Conroy from Roy and Seafood. I believe he's on the line here. There are questions for the owner. And Clay Fowler from Spinnaker is also one of the owners of the property. It's zoned in Industrial 1, and it consists, if I can share the screen here, it consists of number of warehouse buildings, and I think the application you just heard was either, I think it was right over here. It was over here. I think it's right in this spot, the last public hearing that you just completed. So we're just down the street. And I will say that there's some confusion in some of the surveys and on the city's website. This is 310, but also 300 Wilson, and this one's 310, but also 314 Wilson, but we have no relationship with the last application that you just heard. In any event, we'd like to put in a dry cleaning business, Go Green Cleaners, within this building at 310 Wilson Ave. It's an interior fit up. It's only in front of you as a CAM application because it's on the water. It will occupy approximately 6,750 square feet of the existing space. It's a change of use with the fit up. We have obtained sign-offs from the Department of Public Works, Building Department, Health Department. We received some comments, I think 3 comments from WPCA, and one of those was to clear it with deep, which has now occurred, and we are working through the last 2 comments from WPCA, and would hope that you approve this tonight with your typical condition that it be subject to sign-offs from the relevant departments. We did go in front of Harbor. And they gave it a favorable recommendation. I think they submitted their report to you just today, although the meeting was a week or so ago, but that should be in the record. And they had no concerns about the project, particularly because we're taking a existing tenant that uses solvents and regulated materials and replacing it with a new tenant that doesn't use regulated chemicals in their natural cleaning process. The floor plans you've seen before, the dry cleaning business this is really sort of their it's not the cleaning, the center of their cleaning operations will be located at this building, but it was really not intended for retail customers to come in and out. There will be a small area in case they do get a customer coming in, but by and large, they're going to be cleaning here and using a handful of vans every morning, leaving here with clean clothes and going out to a number of their other locations, one which is opening in Norwalk. I think there's one or two in Stamford, a couple in Westchester. And then those vans will return with dirty laundry at the end of the day to be cleaned here and start the process over the following day. So it's going to generate very little traffic at the site. I do want, because we do have this public hearing, the operator of the dry cleaner, Igor Madrid, is on the call or the Zoom with us. And he's just going to briefly, if it's okay with you folks, give you just a brief overview of the business. All right, Igor?
Yes, good evening, everyone. How are you? Well, first of all, I'm excited to join Norwalk. You know, I love Stamford. I moved to Connecticut, Stamford, Connecticut about 7 years ago. I love it over here in Harbor Point. We have currently 2 stores that, that we have in the Fairway Shopping Center and off Washington Boulevard. We teamed up with BLT and other property management companies to provide a nice new dry cleaning service. Obviously, it's, most dry cleaners, 85% of them still use perc and hydrocarbons. This is a new way of cleaning clothes without using the harsh chemical, because it's important. Your skin breathes, people, have issues, allergy effects with, smells that the old traditional dry cleaners have. We use Green Earth Cleaning, which is 100% biodegradable. It's silicone. It's essential. It's liquefied sand, which is used in many things such as, deodorants, moisturizers. A lot of makeup companies use it, so it's very safe. It's the wave of the future for dry cleaning. It's a little bit pricey because a lot of cleaners can't change because it does require a lot of new state-of-the-art equipment that the solvent specifically requires. And we're excited. I think it'll be a good addition to the community, and we look forward.
Unless you have questions for Igor, I'll move on.
Please go ahead.
Okay, sure. And then we've also got Mike Galante and Steve Cipolla of Frederick Clark and Associates did the traffic evaluation. I believe Mike's colleague Steve is on as well, and he can give you just a very brief overview of the traffic, and you already have his evaluation, which is a part of the record. Steve, if you're there, can you speak up?
Yes. Good evening. Steve Cipolla, Frederick Clark Associates, Hardesty, Hanover. We conducted the traffic evaluation for the proposed dry cleaners. Just to give you a brief overview, the current site houses an existing woodworking operation, which employs 10 to 15 employees. And has customers coming throughout the day, as well as large trucks delivering wood and supplies throughout the day. The proposed dry cleaners will consist of 15 employees. and we'll have 4 vans that will go out in the morning and then return later on in the day. And based on our estimates, the proposed dry cleaner, we estimated that all the employees will come during the morning peak hour, and all 4 vans will also leave during the peak hour in the morning. In the afternoon, the 4 vans will return, and the 15 employees will leave all within a peak hour, which is considered conservative. We estimated that the proposed development will generate 23 vehicles, both during the morning and afternoon peak hours. We compared that to the existing woodworking operation, and that was estimated to generate approximately 17 vehicles, both during the morning and afternoon peak hours. The proposed dry cleaner is estimated to generate an additional 6 vehicles during each of the peak hours. But with the proposed dry cleaners, it will not generate any large truck traffic. It'll be substituted, it will be for regular size vans that will be servicing the site. Based on review of existing volumes along Wilson Avenue, the additional 6 vehicles during each peak hour will have an insignificant, if any, measurable impact both to the 2 site access drives as well as the Wilson Avenue corridor. With that, if there's any questions.
Okay. So I think the proposed use will have no adverse effect on coastal resources. It was additionally, the Sono Ice House was approved in 2011, and the property underwent extensive renovations, including to the drainage and water quality upgrades, and they're all will remain for this fit up project. The application complies fully with Norwalk's zoning regulations, including the coastal zone regulations. And we hope that you'll approve the application this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any questions from the commissioners?
My only question is, you mentioned you brought this to Deep and they said they gave it the green light.
Yes. Deep didn't have any issue with the proposed use. There's some monitoring that's required and reporting that's just always required by the applicant that we have to comply with. I'm happy, I believe that your staff has gotten the Deep approval. I think Brian got it today, but I'm happy to forward it again.
Brian, you got that? I was just wanted to, that was my only question, given that this the usage.
Yeah, it's part of, yeah, and it's part of WPCA's kind of working with the applicant to get all their sign off.
Cool. That was all my question.
Okay. Anything else from the commission? Right. If not, let's open it up to the public.
Sure. So we have Diane Loricello's raising her hand. I'll bring her over. Diane, you're muted. There you go.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Zoning Commission. I just wanted to comment on the this application. Number one, I am one who very much feels we should have industrial uses in our industrial zones. One reason is to give, I would be interested in finding out how many jobs are expected to be created or to at least be utilized in this new company. I think it's a terrific way possibly to have local jobs, and I would almost say green jobs, not quite, but having a green jobs. For those of you that know that I'm an environmental consultant by trade, so I am not saying that this particular project should not be approved. I am saying I believe this should be approved with the following considerations and conditions. I have done some work for the folks that live on Village Creek. I'm not representing them tonight, of course, but I have lived on Village Creek, and also I had spoken with some of the neighbors that live on the land side of Wilson Avenue. So the things that I just want to make sure are they're conditioned so that they will not cause any problems in the neighborhood is, of course, that there be a written spill control program, because even though this material is not perchloroethylene, which is the traditional old traditionally an old dry cleaning chemical, there still are chemicals and other uses. So it would be good to know how spills, which happen just in pipes or hoses pop, that sort of thing. We want to make sure, of course, that the storage area for the chemicals or powders that are used, again, are OSHA compliant, and also there would be no escape to the outside through any kind of holes in the floor. We'd look at floor drains. I would imagine all floor drains have been plugged in this building, but that would be a consideration. Also, the operating hours for trucks, especially in this type of business, it would be good to note that I'd like to know, and if it could be answered, as to whether there will be trucks coming in and out in the middle of the night and on weekends for people that have emergency work they need. Hopefully that's not the case. And lastly, the air quality. I am not sure about the chemical use. So could Mr. Madrid and Attorney Blank possibly offer to Zoning Commission a copy of the material safety data sheets, otherwise now known as the safety data sheets, of all chemicals that will be utilized in the processing of the dry cleaning? I think that would be helpful, and also, of course, for the fire marshal, but mainly for this commission, so the public, if they so chose, could look at it later on. With that, I thank you for your time. And as I said, I do believe it's important to have industrial uses in industrial zones. As long as they're good neighbors, they're clean. And of course, lastly, as far as noise, that is a consideration and has always been in the Wilson Avenue area. So thank you for your time. And I look forward to hearing the Zoning Commission evaluate this application.
Thank you, Dana.
Brian, are there any other public comments?
So if any public would like to speak, please use the raise your hand feature. If you're dialed in on a phone, hit *9. I'm not seeing any, Lou.
Okay, if not, let's turn it back to Attorney Blank.
Thank you. First, I'll just point out, I failed to mention earlier, we did submit the green cards for the notice to the neighbors to staff, and those should be in your file. I'm going to let Igor speak to most of Ms. Loricella's questions or concerns. I will note that the facility plans to have a handful of vans that will come in and out. They're not operating trucks. And as you know, the ice house is next door that does a fairly good volume of hockey business into the late hours of the night and the early hours of the morning. This tenant is not going to be creating noise for the neighborhood. And Igor, can you just go a little bit through the spill control and the safety spec sheets?
Sure, sure. I mean, the spill control, there is, the dry cleaning machines have safety spill. I mean, they're state-of-the-art machines. They have, I think they're like 200-gallon, like, you know, protectors, which these machines really, it never happens. And especially again with this solvent, it's so safe, and there is no issues. There's no regulations, even that EPA, DC, OSHA, you know, throughout the whole country. Tide is one of the main franchises, Tide Dry Cleaners, that uses Green Earth Cleaning. That doesn't, you know, it's Procter and Gamble, and they go through so much regulations, so many things. So me using the solvent, I mean, it's so safe. You know, it's not even a petrochemical, it's not a hydrocarbon. All the soaps that I use, they're all biodegradable. I mean, my function in my business is strictly, you know, to be green. That's why it's Go Green Dry Cleaners. You know, we try to be as green and efficient as possible. There is, you know, there is waste, you know, anytime we clean a still, like every couple of months, you know, we use Safety Clean or it's basically waste companies that pick up, you know, barrels that are safely sealed, you know, and they're stored right away. So if there is, you know, let's say there's a flood or there's something, you know, traumatic happens, these as soon as they're filled up, I call them up and they come the following day and they take the waste out. So there's all different types, you know, of procedures that I do use that make sure we're 100% safe and there is no effect to anything, pretty much.
And I believe you've got a couple of hundred pages of materials about the Go Green cleaning process and the solvents that they use.
Yeah, which I could provide the literature. I mean, there, you know, I sent you the landlord booklet. You know, it basically specifies, you know, all the different type of, you know, scientific whatever, you know, the scientific version of this solvent, you know, and it's so safe. I mean, you could literally put it on your skin. It's just nothing. It's got no extreme smell to it, you know, and it's good for the skin because your skin breathes. So that's why it's so important that people realize, you know, when they put something in their skin, it's not something that's going to harm them.
And Igor, can you just for the benefit of Ms. Loricella and the commission as well, but give the web address. I know that we've submitted most of the hard materials from the website, but the website with all of the literature, I think most of which is what Ms. Loricella is looking for.
You can look it up on my website or mainly the greenearthcleaning.com. So it's www.greenearthcleaning.com or gogreendrycleaners.com. You can pull it up and, you know, it specifies everything that, you know, you need to know about the process. And, you know, and then obviously I have the washing machines, which is water, and we use all organic soaps, you know, to clean the laundered shirts. Basically, that's mostly laundry. We're not a wash and fold type of place. So the commercial washers are mainly used to clean the shirts like you're wearing out.
Thank you. Unless there's other questions, I think that would conclude our presentation.
Anything from staff? Either Steve or Brian?
No.
Okay. Any final questions from the commissioners? All right, if not, this hearing is closed. And we'll move on. The next item is action on 3-20 SP/1-20 CAM, 310 Wilson Avenue web construction. And that is action on their application. Steve, do you have the capacity to put up a copy of an approval for that?
I'm thinking Brian's doing that right now, so I'll give.
Okay.
1 second.
While Brian's working on that, is there further discussion on that contract, the contractor's yard?
The only thing I would add is it may be an interesting case study as we're looking to look at the zoning rules more broadly of a case where I feel like it bounced around a lot. Like in some ways, like I feel sort of bad for the applicant. I was reading the Harbor report of the Harbor group referred it to DEP. It just felt like it was like a very convoluted process. And I don't know if it's just because it's on the water and these are more difficult and more tenuous situations, but I'd be curious if it's worth taking a look at once we get to that point in the process.
I think that makes sense, and that also fits into the study, which is commenced on reviewing our industrial land throughout the city. Can I have a motion to either approve or deny the application?
I'll move to approve it.
Okay, Mr. Johnson moves to approve it. Is there a second?
Second. Frank.
Okay, Frank, provide second. Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to say something before I vote.
Sure.
In Attorney Such's letter that she wrote, she indicates on more than one occasion that she doesn't think that we have the jurisdiction to be looking into some of the things that we're looking into and we're asking questions about. And I think that our obligation regarding conservation of wetlands, watercourses, and other ecologically viable lands gave us specific authority to be asking the questions and doing the things that we did. As Mr. Cantor suggested, it does get a little complicated when you're dealing with tidal wetlands. There's a lot of other agencies that are involved. But at the end of the day, I think we did have the jurisdiction to ask the questions, and they were adequately answered, in my opinion, but it was a little convoluted getting there. I read yesterday the email that was forwarded from Brian from John Pinto, and I thought, geez, now there's another open issue, but apparently it wasn't. So I just want to say that I think that Attorney Suchi answered all of our questions, and I also wanted to say that Webb Construction appears to be operating its stone crushing plant pretty well. So I'm in favor. I'm going to vote yes, but I just wanted to say that first.
Any other comments from commission members?
I agree with Richard's comments on the jurisdictional issue. I would want at some point, I wouldn't want to presume, any arguments that any future legal counsel would have to make if this issue were to go to a zoning board of appeals or there be any litigation. But I do agree with Rich that the general sense that these issues, and especially these environmental issues, do, to the extent that it has to do with the zoning application, does fall within our jurisdiction. Or at least I agree with Dick's analysis. So just wanted to send up my second there.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. If not, Brian, can we do a roll call on this?
Sure. Let me get out of here so I can see everybody. All right. Mr. Schulman?
Yes.
Mr. Rowena?
Yes.
Mr. Witherspoon?
Yes.
Mr. Mancini?
Approve.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wells?
Yes.
And Mr. Goldstein?
Yes.
Okay, the vote's unanimous. It's approved. The next item is 3-20 CAM-300 Wilson Avenue LLC. It's action on the change of use from manufacturing to dry cleaning. Discussion?
So I had my mute button on before when you were asking for comments, so I wasn't quick enough on the draw, so I don't know if this is appropriate to say now. But we have requested applicants on past applications to do what they can about disabling the backup beepers when they're within their property that they're allowed to do under the OSHA regulations. And I would just suggest, given what appears to be the proximity to the water and to Village Creek, it might be helpful, Village Creek subdivision, it might be helpful to have those beepers disabled if that's possible.
Attorney Blank, would you like to respond to this?
Sorry, I think you closed the hearing, correct? So I don't think.
Oh, I cannot ask?
Yeah, as much as we'd like to hear from Attorney Blank, I don't think we can anymore.
Okay, I apologize for that. Well, Brian, can we put up a motion to approve? And then we can discuss among ourselves that issue. Richard, you want to make a suggestion about language to insert here as perhaps item 6?
Yes, if the applicant would look into the feasibility of disabling the backup alarms pursuant to the OSHA regulations while operating within their premises.
Okay. Actually, Brian, I think you could end it with property. And just make it their property. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Sorry, Lou. For item 6, I think we would have to add as long as it's compliant with OSHA regulations.
That certainly makes sense.
I can spell.
I would put in the word applicable before OSHA.
So backup alarm, I don't actually have any backup alarms in any of my trucks. Just saying.
Well, if you do in the future.
Okay. You'll need a period after regulation.
And take the period out between property and per.
That's a comma. But I can take that out.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the resolution as written?
Moved.
Okay, Josh moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Richard.
Richard seconds. Any discussion on this? If not, all those in favor? Well, I'm sorry, I sometimes forget that we're not together. Brian, you want to do a roll call?
Sure. Mr. Schulman?
Yes.
Mr. Rowena?
Yes.
Mr. Witherspoon?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Cantor,
Yes.
Mr. Goldstein,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Mancini, Ms. Wells.
Yes.
and
The motion is approved unanimously. Let's move on to the next item, 10-97 SPR /16-02 SP. Costco, request to modify approved plan to relocate parking spaces.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if there's anybody from Costco on the call or not. If they are not, I can probably talk you through it. It's pretty simple.
Okay,
Yeah, seeing none, I'm going to assume that's correct. So Costco has, I'm sure if you've been to the Costco property, you'll all have experienced that it's not the best parking flow and parking lot situation you can encounter for a store. Presently the handicap, I can pull up maybe I have an aerial picture that might help the conversation. Hold on one second. Okay, so assuming you can see my screen now, here's the existing Costco building. The existing handicap spaces are located along the building here. I did not go back out to field verify this, but I believe that for some reason the sidewalk, which I'm pointing to along this area, is actually raised above the grade of the pavement. So if you were
correct.
Okay, good. So if you're within a wheelchair, you need to get access to that that sidewalk, and you have to either get to the end of the sidewalk, which means you're going to be passing behind, moving vehicles that potentially could be backing up and not see you in your wheelchair, which is not the safest and best situation possible. So what Costco would like to do is designate those spaces as employee parking, with the idea that they are less transient and they'll be parking there for a longer period of time, avoiding some of the in and out conflicts with cars that are moving in and out of Costco's entranceway that runs down to Connecticut Ave. The handicap spaces would be relocated, and these also include the requisite number of van accessible spaces. They'll get relocated to this parking area, which is directly in front of the entrance. They're going to add a second hatch crosswalk and the appropriate signage to make that completely ADA compliant. I did discuss the plan with the building department, who administers the handicap spaces, and they are in favor of the proposal. That's it in a nutshell.
Steve, where is the parking for the tire changes, for the tire people?
That, the employees themselves, or like the people coming to
No, the people
change tires?
who park at a special place while they purchase a tire. I think that's in the same area.
No, it's further back. Yeah, where Steve's, bring the cursor back to that the last row along the turnpike. I believe that's.
Oh, it's there. I see. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and the handicap spaces will go in approximately this area.
Yep.
I mean, I will say it raised a concern for me about crossing, because the traffic flow there is often chaotic and feels very dangerous for an able-bodied person. And I just wondered if they would consider keeping maybe 2 spaces on the same side, or 3 spaces where they're considering converting it all to employee parking.
Stephanie, instead of that, what if they were to place on either side of the handicapped parking stop signs?
The other thing is, don't they have handicap parking in the garage underneath where you can get right into the elevator and come up?
I don't think it's marked as handicapped, but I don't
Sure, I think
remember.
it'd be good to have some handicap parking down there, because that's the easiest way to get in to avoid all that craziness around the entrance.
But you're right, Lou. I don't think there's a stop sign anywhere on that side currently.
Ethan, or maybe we ought to ask traffic and parking to take a look at that issue for us. I mean, it says
The traffic around there is really bad. If you go on a Saturday afternoon, I'm surprised someone hasn't gotten hit by a car by now. I mean, it's a terrible throughway.
It's a terrible layout to begin with. I mean, it always has been. And given that they didn't have the courtesy to even send someone to answer our questions, perhaps we want to kick this down to the our next meeting so that we can get an answer. I mean, I understand their concern. I think it's a legitimate concern they have. But I would like to get an answer to whether it's feasible and practical to put in stop signs on either side of that to protect handicapped residents entering the store.
Yeah, and maybe, handicap parking on the lower level, which is altogether safer, but nobody goes down there. That's why they're all carrying on up above. Frequently, if you just go to the lower level, you're fine.
Right.
You can park right away, go up in the elevator, and there's no hassle.
Steve, do you have any problem with that suggestion that we?
No, that's fine. I can reach out to them and then see if they're available at the next meeting. Fine.
Okay. Yeah, let's have a conversation with traffic and parking staff regarding that. I'm sorry I didn't think of it until this evening. All right. Do we want to defer this then until our next meeting?
That would be the wise thing.
Yeah.
I think, Steve, can we just do this by consensus?
Yeah, I think you can just keep the item open. It's fine.
Okay. Everyone good with that, or anybody object to it? Okay, there's no objection to it. Then we'll move on. As I've said, Wall Street Recap, their items are for this meeting off the table. Steve, is it appropriate to ask why they pulled it?
It was a little miscommunication between myself and the applicant. I was under the impression they wanted some time crunches to get this moving as soon as possible, but they wanted to not present right after they submitted the application, so they'll be on your next meeting.
Okay. All right, next item is item C, 2-20 Cam 4 Westmere Avenue. That's the, well, it's referred to here as a second story addition, but basically it's a tear down and rebuild within the existing envelope. We were waiting to hear back from, was it Conservation, Steve, or?
Harbor, which I think Brian has gotten confirmation from.
Yep, Harbor okayed it.
Okay. Are there any further questions about it? There was very little discussion at our last meeting. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve it.
So moved.
Okay, Michael moves. Is there a second?
Second it.
Rod seconds. Any discussion? All right, if not, Brian, let's do a roll call.
All right, Mr. Schulman,
Yes.
Mr. Rowena,
I'll have to abstain. I wasn't at the last meeting.
Mr. Witherspoon,
Listen, I did
Yes.
listen to the tapes for Webb.
Mr. Witherspoon,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Cantor,
Abstain.
Ms. Thomas,
Abstain.
Ms. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Mancini,
Yes.
and Mr. Goldstein.
Yes.
Okay, project's approved. 8-20 SP, Norwalk Housing Authority, Colonial Village. New multifamily development, 18 new buildings. Adam, are you going to make the presentation?
I am.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, members of the commission for taking the time this evening to conduct this hearing. For the record, my name is Liz Succi. I'm a partner with Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy. On the line on the screen tonight will be Adam Bavilski, Executive Director of the Housing Authority, Tom Maestros, architect with Stull & Lee, that's the project architectural firm, Kevin McCutcheon, civil engineer with Ty and Bond. I think at your next meeting, we'll bring Neil Olinsky of Malone and McBroom, the traffic engineer, as well as Kate Throckmorton of Environmental Land Solutions, who did who's our wetlands consultant, also who prepared the landscape plan. Since initially we're going to have a more lengthy agenda, we thought it would probably be best to just separate that out. A little housekeeping. Notice of the submission of the application was mailed to neighbors by certificate of mailing per your regulations on August 5th. And I believe from Mr. Kleppen, there have been some interest generated by that notice of mailing, and some members of the public have started to send Mr. Kleppen some comments and questions and emails. The applicant, as is indicated, is the Housing Authority of the City of Norwalk. The property is at 164 West Cedar. The zone is D residence. The overall property is approximately 30 acres. And as you know, or as you should know, being Norwalk residents, it is largely occupied by Colonial Village, which was built in 1951. There are 19 detached structures that offer about 200 units of affordable housing. The property that's the subject of this application is land owned by the Housing Authority, about 7 acres. It is not city park land or city-owned land, and I think that's a misconception that some may have. It is land owned by the Housing Authority. And years ago, it had a community center. And the only reason I remember that is my sister-in-law was a school teacher at the City of Norwalk, and she tutored children at that community center after hours. So it's the northern 7 acres that we're talking about. The proposal is to develop that with approximately 18 structures containing 69 units thereabout. And if Tom Maestros could put up on the screen, if possible, if he could screen share the survey, that would be helpful. If not, the site plan, whichever we might be able to get up.
Can you pull those up?
There you go. Whichever one you can do, Tom.
Yes.
Site plan probably fine.
Yeah, add Kevin Benjamin to the discussion. He's actually going to be manipulating the plans.
Okay. So we'll just
the second Thomas Maestros heading there.
Right. So as I said, the concept is to develop that 7 acres that is generally vacant with new housing, both supportive, affordable, market rate, and HUD individuals who are HUD subsidized. The parking for the property and for this development will meet the city requirements, as will all component parts of this project. As you may recall, you adjusted your parking regulations several years ago for multifamily development. Let me take a step back. Here's the overall survey of the property. On the southern side from Suncrest Road, generally to the north, south, to the west, is where Colonial Village is. You'll see those structures, the boxes, the rectangles. Those are the existing buildings of Colonial Village. The concept plan is for the northern portion or the eastern portion of the park property that is identified as proposed parcel 2 on this old survey. So Tom, if you wouldn't mind putting up the site plan right now. So as I indicated before, the project that we're proposing, 69 dwelling units in 18 structures. It meets all the requirements of the resident zone for multifamily. A question had come up about whether or not the parking met the requirements. And as you know, you adjusted your parking requirements several years ago for multifamily. So instead of requiring 2 parking spaces per unit, you only now require 1.3 parking spaces. This development is going to provide 138 parking spaces, even though only just shy of 90 would be required under the regulations. The parcel that's to be developed is owned by the Norwalk Housing Authority. As I said before, it is not a city park. It is not city-owned land. It is part of property that the Housing Authority has always contemplated doing something with at some point in time, and that time is now. As you'll see from this site plan, access would be off West Cedar Street on the right side of your screen, a common drive roadway through the parcel with the various structures, buildings, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom buildings around that drive aisle. And in the middle of, almost in the middle of the plan, you'll see a community center. That is a proposed 5,400 square foot building where the Housing Authority would offer after-school programs for children, other types of programming, tutoring, weekend programs, and maybe even some summer programming for individuals, students, children who live in this neighborhood, in this development. The proposal contemplates 18 one-bedroom units that are about 900 square feet in size, 27 two-bedroom that are about just shy of 1,200 square feet in size, and they range a little bit around that number, and 24 three-bedroom units that generally are about 1,450 square feet. So as I said before, some would be market rate, at least 7 would be affordable deed restriction per 830G and your workforce housing regulations, 118-1050. Some would be HUD subsidized and some would be supportive housing. We are not proposing any zone changes, text amendments, variances, none are necessary for the project. So it is all, the development is as it is permitted under the D-resident zone. One of the other things that's interesting about this, when we talk about recreation area for multifamily residential projects, there is a walking trail that's proposed all along the kind of the northern, and Tom is showing it now, about a 1/4 mile walking trail all along this section. It borders wetlands that exist just between this trail and that property line and that area that Tom is indicating. There is about, how many, 25,000 square feet? Let me get the number here. About 25,000 square feet of wetlands and watercourse in that area. The watercourse extends from the left of that screen around the top and then down the right. An application has been filed with the Inland Wetlands Agency for significant activity because there is some activity proposed in the upland review area, which is within their jurisdiction. We were scheduled to be before that agency for preliminary review on Tuesday, but the meeting was canceled. So I suspect we'll be before that agency maybe September 15th or thereabout. And that agency will review, will likely hold a public hearing, and it must render its decision before this agency can render its decision. The wetlands that exist, just in case you might want to know, they provide various functions there. So they're valuable. They have not been well maintained. There is overgrown invasive species. There is a variety of stuff, for lack of a better word, that's been deposited. So they'll be cleaned up. They'll be brought to better functioning condition and improved with native species planted around that, not only the wetlands, but along that back edge of the walkway. Rain garden is proposed and other features such as that. If you would like, at the next meeting, we can certainly have Kate Throckmorton of Environmental Land Solutions walk you through more about the inland wetlands and watercourses, but the Conservation Commission will certainly take that up and evaluate the impacts, if any, and what we are proposing and the mitigation that we're proposing in connection with any impacts we may have. At this point, I would like to have Kevin McCutcheon come up in just a minute, but I just wanted you also to know that the application and supporting documents were referred to South Norwalk Electric and Water, Department of Public Works, Fire Department, Water Pollution Control Authority, Health Department, and Traffic, Mobility, and Parking. And sign-offs so far have been received by SNU, Fire, and Health. There are some additional monitoring that Water Pollution Control Authority has asked us to undertake. And let me see. And Traffic, Mobility, and Parking has suggested removal of some parking spaces, on-street spaces on West Cedar Street to provide for better sightlines. That request by TMP and by us will go before the Traffic Authority. And I believe the date is September 21st. So we'll report back on that and let you know. So at this point, if Kevin wouldn't mind jumping in, and we probably do the site plan.
A very quick question.
Sure.
Have you determined the locations for the workforce housing?
We have, and the workforce housing plan and a plan in the set that was submitted with the application does identify those. we can certainly provide smaller copies that can be handed out to the commissioners. But yes, we did do that, and it as it is required. And I thought I had attached it to the workforce housing plan. If I didn't, I'll make sure I do, and then those can be distributed.
You may have, and I apologize if I.
No worries,
missed
not a problem. Okay, Kevin, all you.
Great. Thank you, Liz. I assume you can all hear me, right?
Yep.
Great, great. Again, I'm Kevin McCutcheon with Ty and Bond of 213 Court Street in Middletown, Connecticut. I'm a civil engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut for over 10 years. What we're looking at on the screen here is figure L 1.01, which was prepared by our landscape architect, Environmental Land Services. For orientation, north is on the left of the screen and south is in the right. The site consists of, hope you don't hear that noise in the background, I apologize. Well, bear with me
Young
1 second.
children are always welcome.
All right. 1 second, bear with me one.
Well, Liz, while we're waiting, what is our view today?
The view today was taken of, this is over Oyster Pond in Chatham, Massachusetts, taken last Friday. I was the beneficiary of a biplane ride with my brother and my son, and pretty cool. We even got to see great white sharks from the air, right next to the beach. So I think I will never go in the water again.
That's awesome.
I greatly apologize.
Cool.
My son's been very patient with this whole ordeal, and every once in a while we all get a little antsy. So thanks for bearing with me there. Anyway, the site consists of 24-foot wide access drive coming off of West Cedar Street on the south, heads north between the buildings, and ultimately connects to a driveway and parking area on the north end of the site between some of the existing buildings at this site. There's perpendicular parking spaces proposed all along that for the majority of that access drive, and then in the middle of the access drive it splits and goes around an area that we're calling a center village. There's breaking up all that parking is periodically there's some planted islands where you'll see there's some trees as well as some street lighting that will help light the site and the driveway. There's a network of, there's also two smaller spur off that main drive for additional parking. Some of those spaces serving the existing buildings right along West Cedar Street, and then a small parking area serving the first two buildings up near, new proposed buildings up near West Cedar Street. There's a network of sidewalks and crosswalks that provide pedestrian access, pedestrian circulation throughout the site. Again, that near that center of the site is what we're calling the village center. It's an area that counts for part of the open recreational space that consists of planted area, open lawn space, some seating, gazebo type building, mailboxes and community board are what's intended in that area. The other open space designated area is what Liz had referred to before, the linear walking trail that's behind the building on the buildings on the eastern side of the site that kind of meanders near the wetlands, near the edge of the wetlands on that eastern side. 8-foot wide permeable pavement path with additional clear space on the side for a 10-foot wide corridor, a 10-foot minimum corridor, and some seating as well. Also goes past a very shallow rain garden that's proposed near the northern end of the site, which helps with the water quality aspect of the proposed design. And then Tom, if you would flip to the next sheet, please. Here we're looking at our proposed drainage plan. So we've the proposed grading and drainage for the site is designed to mimic the existing drainage patterns as much as possible. Stormwater is designed to reduce the peak flow and volume below the existing conditions for this rather undeveloped portion of the site. We're treating the water quality volume with the proposed design. That's the volume, it's commonly referred to as the first 1 inch of rainfall. So that's treated throughout the site by means of the rain gardens, as well as on these two sheets here. The light blue areas are the below ground infiltration. The more squared areas are below ground infiltration chambers, and the more linear are linear pipes that are oversized to help attenuate the additional runoff generated from the impervious surfaces. So the roofs, the sidewalks, the pavement are all collected through roof drain leaders, catch basins, and so forth, directed to these infiltration systems. There's 4 of them. There's 2 on the previous sheet, 2 on this sheet, as well as 2 linear oversized pipe areas. Then there's in advance upstream of all these systems, there's hydrodynamic separators proposed, which additionally treat for water quality volume, and outlet control structures associated with each of these systems to help keep that designed to keep that flow below existing conditions. So on that note, I will turn this over to Tom Maestros for the architectural aspects.
So I'm Thomas Maestros with Stoneleigh Architects. We have been the architects of record for this project for more years than I care to mention. And I've been practicing architecture and planning permitting for even more years than I care to mention. Before I get too far into the architecture, I wanted to just give Adam, if he had any issues you wanted to just highlight before I get into the architecture of the project. Adam, did you have anything you wanted to provide or have input on?
No. I think why don't you proceed, and if the commissioners have questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
So what we're looking at now is an aerial of the project. Across the bottom of the site would be West Cedar. It provides the only access to this. It provides the main access or primary access and address to the site. Go to the next one, Kevin. You've already seen the basic aerial plan. So what we provided is a exploded perspective that gives you a sense of the variety of buildings and also how the site circulation is intended, plus to show how the buildings would in their context relate to the existing buildings, both those of the Colonial Village, as well as the residential buildings that are along the West Cedar and also the back behind the site on the other side of the wetlands. You'll notice that we have a combination of buildings here. We have larger multifamily buildings that include which we refer to as the D-type buildings, which have 5 and 6 units, and the smaller buildings, which are duplex units, primarily three-bedroom units that have, as I said, 3 bedrooms and then 2 units, 2 3-bedroom units. Do you want to go next one, Kevin? We're taking longitudinal sections of the site so you can get a sense of the varied topography as we're up at Cedar Street on the far upper drawing on the far right, and then slope down into the site. The learning center is there in probably a third of the way down. The larger buildings are generally focused on the center of the site, away from the existing other buildings, and functioning or focusing on the open space that we've created. And then then we slope down the site, and that's a narrow part of our site as far as available land goes. And so we have narrow buildings, the 2-family buildings there, then the more, which are oriented parallel to the site, and then the 2 families that are A-type units are perpendicular to the site. And then we terminate with a larger, again, type D multifamily building. On the other side, these buildings, again, the A's buildings that are closer to the adjacent structures, the D buildings, which are on the top part of the site, and then back to an A building. You can notice that we have a variety of colors and proportions to help to break the buildings down. Kevin, why don't we go to the next slide? Here you can see some variety of colors that we're planning on using and the elements that we're going to be using to break the buildings down. The use of porches, the use of bays, projecting bays, the use of gables, two-story structures, and the use of dormers, all in efforts to take the larger buildings and break them down. You'll also see we're getting some variety in colors to help also, and banding to help also break down the building and the massing of the buildings. We're primarily going to be in the blues and gray tones, but we're also adding yellows and some reds to add some additional interest. Do we want to go to the, and these are all showing of the D buildings. This slide is inserted to give you a sense of the materiality that's going to be used. We are planning on using a high quality vinyl siding material called Certainteed. It will have a insulated backing to keep its form. All trim boards and trim elements are going to be solid PVC of the same, by the same fabricator. And the illustrations that are blue in tone are our proposed buildings or samples of our proposed buildings, the A-type building. The two other exhibits are from the Certainteed catalog to give you a sense of the kinds of how we would be using their products to address our trim boards and such. We're planning on using the Certainteed product again to because it's a very high quality product and very low maintenance. Should allow the development to maintain its color and quality finished materials for a very long period of time. Can we go to the next one? Okay. We've taken the opportunity to build a 3D model, which is a part of what you like to see a physical model, but we have this developed in 3D format. So that's the wrong, that's the plus. Next one. We'll start up in the upper right-hand corner with views of the E building. The E building is developed for two purposes. It allows us to have the frontage along Cedar Street that we required, plus in our narrower part of the site, so we're not intruding into the wetlands area. We can have these buildings kind of fit into place. You'll see how they relate as we step up then to the D-type buildings, which are 5 and 6 stories. They're focused more in the center of the site. The type D2 and A building are shown in the next image. And these are looking from the central open space. And as you can tell, the project is then wrapping around back over towards Cedar Street. Where the next slide we have is more of a bird's eye view with the showing how the buildings relate to the open space again. They also show how the parking would be handled and how we would be offsetting the building slightly from the street to create a buffered front along the driveway street. And then the last shot will give you a little bit of a sense of how the learning center would be integrated. And again, these are all the 3 different images of the 3 different D-type buildings. D3 is in the center. And you'll see how we're using, again, the porches, the dormers, and the projecting bays, all to break up the scale of the building and to get them to feel much smaller in scale and relate to the context. The next series of slides, I believe, when we get there. So we just quickly walk through the buildings to give you a sense of the scale. These are the A buildings. The next, and the plans then, which are the next slide, show you how they're side-by-side duplex units, 3 bedrooms on the second floor. They average, as Liz had mentioned, approximately 1,700 square feet, so they're quite generous in size. The next image is of the first, and I'm sorry, and this, so you can see here, the cross section shows you that they are 2-story buildings, in this case with hip roofs. to help relate to the 2.5-story buildings that are the next D-size buildings. We do stay well within the height limits as established by the zoning for this D subdistrict. The next building is the first view of the D-type buildings. This happens to be D1, which is a 6 family. You can again see how we have a vocabulary of elements between the porches again, the recesses, the dormers, porches front and rear then as well, and the side projections, projecting bays as well, to all help break up the scale of the building and add more interest to the elevation. This is typical of the D-type units. They're all pretty much the same scale. These you can see are two two-bedroom units on the first floor, two two-bedroom units on the second floor, and two one-bedroom units on the third floor. Can you go to the section then, Kevin? And so you can see, and you might want to zoom out of that a little bit, Kevin, so you can see. Zoom out. So these are true 2.5-story structures. So we're taking advantage of that half story to both break down the scale as well as utilize that space for what we think are going to be some very interesting apartments. The other thing to note as far as the D units go, all of the first floor units on the D buildings, both the 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3 bedrooms are going to be fully accessible. Some will be group 1 units, so they'll actually have all accessible kitchens and baths. Those will all be based on the programming requirements for the housing authority. But all the first 4 units will have the capabilities of being handicap accessible, fully handicap accessible units. We'll go to the next slide. And these next set will just show you, we'll just kind of go through these really quickly. These again are the D-type units. Let's go to the next plan. And you can see from this one on the first floor, the plan up on the upper left shows a 1-bedroom and 3-bedroom unit on the first floor. Second floor is the same as the units in the other models. And the third floor in this case is one very big 2-bedroom unit. We have underneath the eaves a lot of area that could be used for storage, and for the purposes of this discussion, there's just unfinished area in that part of the square footage. We can go to the next, we can just skip these next two, Kevin. That's again the sections that show you how we're utilizing the upper level for a true 2.5-story structure. The next slide is the other D3 unit. It is a combination of both of the other D-type units. And again, you can just see how we're using a variety of elements to add interest and variety to the scale. Go to the next one. And then the next one, Kevin. So finally, this is the E-type unit. Again, this is the building that you would see as you're approaching or fronting West Cedar Street. It is the 60-foot long frontage to meet our requirements as dimensional requirements, also broken up so that there's a variety, that more interest in breaking up of the massing, both the use of the projecting bay on the left. You can see the 2 entrances to the units, and then a porch entrance, porch covered entrance, and then porches on the back of the buildings for each of the units. And I think that's, oh, I'm sorry. And then the next set of slides, if we can jump past the floor. So you can see the floor plans there oriented parallel to the street and driveway versus perpendicular to have a narrow frontage to meet our tight constraints in some locations of the site. Again, living, dining, kitchen, bathroom on the first floor, and then 3 bedrooms on the second floor with bathroom. The next slide would be another section, which we'll just skip past. The final couple of slides have to do with initial passes at the Learning Center. Again, a one-story structure with gabled roof to allow it to relate a little bit more in scale to the others. It's a little more contemporary as far as the proportion and massing, but still the same materials to be used. To the next slide, Kevin. So here you can see, as Liz mentioned, it's a 5,400 square foot facility. It has 2 classrooms and then support areas for the Learning Center. It also has administrative space for right there, just to the right. There's administrative space for the learning centers, the network-wide learning centers. And then in front of the building, there's administrative space for Norwalk housing as far as management of the overall site. We'll go to the next. I don't think that's it for our slides. Cross section again to give you a sense of scale, how the building would be proportioned. So that concludes the architectural component. If there are any questions, we can certainly flip back through these and answer them.
I have a general question. The water gardens have been mentioned. I'm just wondering if you're planning any other green infrastructure as part of this development.
Okay, well, Kevin probably be best to answer that. But we do have a lot of open space, both in between the buildings, around the buildings, accessible switch to the back of the buildings. We have a structured play area that's part of the Learning Center that's going to be open to play structures. We do have a tentative plan that's been developed. It'll include swing sets, a climbing structure, and a couple other play elements. And then we have the central common area or green that will be kind of hopefully a gathering space and utilized for the residents as a whole. Does that answer your question, or?
Mr. Chairman,
no.
I think there's also the incorporation of pervious pavers throughout the site as one low impact development concept. But Kevin, could you speak to a little bit more about green design and green elements?
Yes, definitely. There's the one rain garden that's proposed on the north end of the site, but in addition to that, there's a significant amount of permeable pavement currently proposed. In this graphic on the sheet, the lighter color gray are the parking spaces along the main access drive. So all of those parking spaces along the access drive are currently proposed as permeable pavement. So the 24-foot wide section that the drive lanes will be standard pavement, but differentiated at the edge of that where the parking begins would be permeable, as well as the walking trail, the linear walking trail is proposed as permeable as well due to sensitivity, how close it is to the wetlands, as well as the overall stormwater management. There's not a ton of other opportunity on the site. There's definitely challenges on the site with topography and along the majority of the eastern edge of the site with the wetlands. There's very poor infiltration rates. So there weren't that many other locations. There really wasn't any other open space locations to do any surface rain garden type features left that could perform as infiltration and green type infrastructure.
I have a question, but it's not about design or architecture. I understand the affordable units, and I understand them being designated as affordable in perpetuity. I totally get that, but I don't understand what's happening with the others. When you say it's market rate and it's supportive housing and it's HUD housing, I don't understand what that means.
Maybe it might be best if Adam Pavilski could answer that directly.
Yeah, sure. So first, let me just say that it's considered a national best practice to have mixed income housing. When we concentrate poverty in one place, like many of our developments are now, it tends to have poorer outcomes on health, on education, on the economics of the people living there. There tend to be lots of negative outcomes with concentrated poverty. So what we're trying to do with all of our new redevelopments as we move forward as a housing authority is create mixed income development. We've seen a great success of that in Soundview Landing, which 2 phases of which are now fully open and occupied, where we have market rate units at $2,800 a month next to low income housing at, based on income at, $200, $400, $600 a month. In these communities, we tend to have far better outcomes, again, as far as crime, education, health, economics, and all of that. So that's the model we are using. We're also going to be trying to finance the project in part with low-income housing tax credits. To get full points for that, 20% of the units need to be supportive housing. So what we'll likely be doing there is we'll be taking, that's about 14 units. We'll be taking 14 units. We'll be putting a HUD subsidy in there. So it's a subsidized housing. And then taking families off of the regional, the Norwalk Housing First Collaboratives sort of regional homelessness list. It's called the CAN list. Those people will come in, they'll be provided some services by various agencies, including the Open Door Shelter, Families and Children's Agencies, MFAP, and Homes with Hope. And those 14 units will house formerly homeless families and be given a subsidy. Those will be low income housing, those 20%. We'll also be having a percentage of market rate units. Now in this neighborhood, we're not going to get the same rates we're getting in Soundview Landing, but the idea is, again, to mix in a percentage of higher wage earners because that deconcentrates poverty and has better outcomes for the whole community. And then because we have the Light Tech funding source, probably the majority of our housing units will be affordable according to the state 8-30G standards of affordability. So we'll have low income, we'll have market rate, and in the middle we'll have affordable units. The exact mix, we're not completely sure yet. It's going to depend in part on our financing plan, which is not complete yet. So the exact mix I can't tell you, but I can tell you we're going to have folks from pretty much every income group up to a certain limit that folks will want to live in this neighborhood.
Have you met with the abutting neighbors
No,
to discuss the project?
No, we have not. This project we're hoping to finance this project with low-income housing tax credits that we'll apply for next year. So we'll apply for them in October, late October or early November of 2021. We are looking to close on the financing probably in April or May of 2022. And to some extent, we might be a little premature to be talking with the neighbors at this point. With that said, I've met with the local common council members, I've met with the mayor, and we're happy to answer anybody's questions that they have about the development. But we, to be honest, we thought it was a little early to start talking to the neighbors and to have such a long drawn out process before so early on in the game.
I understand you. However, whenever anybody's doing a project that may impact on their neighbors, we always encourage them to begin that conversation as early as possible. Word has already gotten out about this project. People are seem to be developing strong feelings about it. And to the extent you can mitigate any of that, it's better done sooner rather than later. Another question, and this actually came out of one of the letters we received, at least indirectly, and that is you're putting in a lot of housing. Are you also planning on increasing your operating budgets so that you can hire additional staff to maintain this new housing?
Yeah, so not before this commission, but we are currently closing in the next week or two on a $34 million renovation of the current phase one Colonial Village, the 200 units that exist now. Before this project really gets going, that will be either complete or predominantly complete, which is basically a gut rehab of all of those buildings, and will be a show of good faith, of course, to the community and the neighborhood to see that we are taking care of our properties. As was discussed by Tom Maestros, the community center is not just going to be a learning center. It will have some administrative offices in there. And unlike now, when we have this expansion, there will be management staff on site during the day, which will also, I think, be a benefit to the community and the neighborhood at large to have on-site management. Currently, Colonial Village has maintenance on site. There's a maintenance office and a maintenance building and maintenance staff on site. But currently there's no management staff on site, and there will then now be a management staff on site to help make sure that the property gets taken care of properly. The operating budget has been, the budget, I should say, for maintenance of the current existing Colonial Village has been on hold as far as the desire to redevelop. They've been reluctant to make major repairs while we were waiting on this major redevelopment, which we are undertaking now, and as I said, is closing the next couple of weeks. So the budget has room in it to have substantial maintenance, more so than any of our federal developments. The state Colonial Village site has better funding than the federal developments, and we believe that we can take care of the property in a very nice fashion, better than we can the federal developments that aren't funded as well.
How long do you?
Quick personal comment, and it will not affect my position on this development, but it's a beautiful piece of property, and it just seems like a shame to do anything with it. But I mean, it's just gorgeous. There's very little of that left in Norwalk.
I would address that if you'll let me. The Norwalk Housing Authority has wait lists for 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms. We have wait lists for senior developments, and we have wait lists for our Section 8 program. All of our wait lists are closed. They're closed, and many have been closed for years. Our Section 8 wait list was last opened in 2012, when over 3 days we got 14,000 applicants, and with a lottery put 1,200 on a wait list. Some of them, now we are 8-9 years later, are still waiting for their Section 8 voucher. The pressure on the affordable housing market is in a crisis. People who work in Norwalk can't afford to live in Norwalk. And we feel like it is our duty as a housing authority, housing being our primary mission, to not sit on our hands and watch people call us every single day asking for public housing and being told there isn't any. Instead, we think it's time to expand and to grow. And here we have a field that is open and ready for development that we already own, that is zoned for this type of construction. And we just feel like it would be a shame to let it sit there, mostly unused, I can tell you. We haven't had a request to use it in a very long time. Sometimes we get requests for a soccer match or a Pop Warner League football or that sort of thing. But we haven't had a request in a very long time to use it. And this field has just been sitting there. And it's hard for the housing authority to watch this resource go underutilized with our wait lists all being closed because they are years long. And we wouldn't want to let someone on the list and give them false hope that they can have housing anytime soon. So this is just going to be a tiny, tiny chip off of a huge problem, but it's a step that we can take, and it's a step that we would like to take and move forward with.
I appreciate the answer.
If I may just interject for a second, one thing that Adam alluded to, not only is the funding in place for the rehab of the existing Colonial Village, but it's my understanding that permits have been secured, at least from the zoning department. So it's more than just we're anticipating that. They've actually started the permit process. And I don't know where we are in the building permit process, but I know that the zoning permit process has begun in earnest.
Yeah, we're hoping to start work on the renovation at the end of September or early October. We believe that that's a realistic deadline.
Adam, how long do you think this project will take once you start it?
So again, we're not looking, the current plan would be to close in, say, the early summer of 2022. The development would likely take a couple of years to be built after that closing.
Okay. And would most of the construction vehicles be using what, West Cedar Street to, when this project is going on?
Well, not on the street, but the access point would be either West Cedar Street or I believe it's Suncrest.
Okay.
That's all that we intended to present to you this evening, since it's preliminary review. We'll certainly have Neil Alinsky and Kate Throckmorton at your next meeting. But if you could give us a sense of what your thinking is in terms of timing on a public hearing on this matter, that would be helpful to us. And we do have some questions, comments, and perhaps some modifications to plans, very slight, that we need to coordinate and then get that back to the zoning office and to all the other departments, so that they all have complete, updated, in the same sets of plans. So if you could give us a sense of what your timing is for hearings, that would be very helpful to us.
Steve, what does our calendar look like?
My first reaction, I'm thinking October 1st, but maybe we could talk offline, Liz, to look at, anticipated return around time on the outstanding items. I think that works, thinking about what our other applications are and how things line up. I don't know if that is okay on your end.
We can certainly talk offline. We also still have not gotten before the Inland Wetland Agency, and we do need to do that. So October 1st would be great, but I think given the fact that they haven't seen us yet, they haven't scheduled a hearing yet, maybe October 1st to return to you, and we'll talk offline and come up with a schedule, and I'll share that with Adam and the rest of the team.
If you want to push it back, that's not a problem on my end at all. So.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I thought I misheard something, but the audio wasn't great, that I wanted to ask Mr. Maestros about. Did he state that there were 5-story buildings part of the development? I didn't see
He
that. But I thought
did. He said 5- and 6-story, but he meant unit, I assume.
Yeah, it's 2.5 stories.
Yeah. That's what the drawing showed, and I was not matching up with what he said, so I got a little scared.
Yeah,
I did too for a moment, but then I read the heading.
I have 2 quick questions, hopefully. Steve, first question for staff, and I'm just trying to understand, this is coming before us for what reason? Because it seems like everything fits in lines with what can be zoned there. I'm just trying to understand what's the special permit for, if I'm understanding that right.
Well, the regulations require a special permit for this type of application. I mean, that's
Gotcha.
the quick
And then so it's
answer,
just,
I guess.
okay. And the approval is
So
go,
as part
no
of your
go.
review, you'll be, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. And then if let's say we say no to that, they couldn't develop this size, but someone could develop similarly in the area or on that parcel.
Right, so, no matter who the applicant was, they would be applying under the same set of rules and regulations, and any use that's permitted, whether by site plan approval or by special permit on this property is, they're legally allowed to pursue that application. When you're doing your review, you're going to be applying the special permit standards to your review, and also the site plan standards to, make sure it's in full compliance in all those regards. So if there's any items you need to address or want to address, we could look at those as part of the overall review.
Gotcha. And the other question I had for, I guess y'all is, it sounded like, if I heard correctly, you said the number of parking requires 90, but you have 120. If you went down to the 90, could more park green space be included into the plan?
I did say that 89.7, 90 spaces are required under the regulations, and we're showing 138. We can certainly take a look at, is there availability to reduce parking, but that is actually also something that is always a difficult thing to address, since there may be more than 2 cars per unit, and we're trying the best to accommodate not only the units, but also we need parking for the community center. But we can take a look at that and see if there are ways to perhaps eliminate a space or two here or there, and maybe we can pick up some additional green space. We'll look at that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
let me just jump in and just say that, of course, we're happy to look at anything that the commission recommends. The Housing Authority Board has felt very strongly about the parking in this development. We have several developments where we feel as though there's insufficient parking, and we get a lot of complaints about that from tenants. And so the board said, hey, we don't want to run into that after we build a brand new development. And they asked for us to increase the parking from earlier sketches. We are happy to look at that, but it's certainly not what our public board desires.
That's helpful.
I also think one of the other things you should, and I'm sure you've looked at this, but that you might take an even harder look at, and that is how you screen this development from the abutting neighbors.
Why screen it? It looks, it'll be a fine development. It certainly is attractive as the abutting neighbors.
I don't disagree with you, but it is a way of reducing neighborhood concern.
If I might just interject, the existing wetlands area is actually very well developed with vegetation. It provides a very strong buffer as it is. I'm not, we can certainly embellish what's there, but right now the existing conditions, we're doing everything we can to maintain the existing buffers right with, not only between this development and the adjacent residences, but also with the existing Colonial Village housing. So it is pretty lavishly planted right now. So I don't think there's going to be, with the exception of the winter times when the deciduous trees lose all of their leaves, I think it's going to be pretty well screened most of the year.
But Chairman Schulman, we'll take a look and see if we'll discuss it with our client, discuss it with Kate Throckmorton, landscape architect, and we'll see if there are opportunities there that may present themselves in response to your question.
Thank you.
May I ask one more question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Sure, and it relates to the parking. Is the parking, and I may have just missed this, is it located where you indicated you had the pervious pavers?
Yes, the dark gray on this L101, those are the spaces in front of the dwellings. Those are the pervious pavers. All the darker gray. The lighter gray is the hard surface for the roadway. And also the
Perhaps, and it just might be the way the drawing is shown, but if the circulation, which is, I guess, the traditional asphalt through there, if that can be reduced at all, that might help cut down on the amount of impervious surface. And perhaps just want to make sure, I mean, I think having the overflow parking myself isn't a problem, but I think if it doesn't need to be, if it can be as pervious as possible, whether it can be some kind of, a paver that lets grass go through versus just a paver that eventually over time is going to become impervious by just through compaction, I think that would be something else you could look at.
Sure, we'll be happy to look at those questions as well. Everyone's on the line. We'll circle back with the whole team beginning of next week. Well, thank you for your time, everyone. Unless someone has some additional questions for either Tom or Kevin or myself, we look forward to coming back to you later this month or early next month, whenever staff deem it appropriate, and we'll move matters forward.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now to our own business. The status report on East Norwalk TOD. Steve or Stephanie?
I don't have anything, but Steve?
Sure.
You're
The
muted, yeah.
plan has gone through 2 public hearings through the Planning Commission as required by charter. There's a little quirk because we have a time crunch to get this done by the end of October, where we have to comply with the charter and the state statute. So we held 2 hearings. The Planning Committee was set to have their public hearing next Thursday, the 10th, but there was a conflict among council members, so we pushed that back to the 17th. The Planning Commission didn't recommend any further edits go into the plan. I think it wasn't unanimous, but it was over 3/4 of the Planning Commission members liked the plan. Everybody had some issues here and there with it, but by and large, they were supportive of the concept and the plan and want to see it go forward. So assuming it gets through council, Planning Commission has to hold a formal adoption hearing at the end of the month. So once that process is concluded, I'll put the draft zoning and the design guidelines on your agenda so we can start working on that portion of it.
Do we have to be complete by end of October?
No,
Okay.
no, that's for our grant funding because we have to, the grant requirement was that the plan get incorporated into the citywide plan by the end of October, which was the extension that they gave us.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Oh, just, Mr. Chairman, there's a couple people with their hands up that I believe they're related to the last application. I'm just going to let them know there is no public comment at this time related to the Colonial Village application. When the public hearing is open, then that's when the public is allowed to participate at the public meeting.
Okay. Industrial zone, first meeting was held, and Richard, can you just report on how that went? You're muted.
We had the first meeting today, and we were introduced to the players that are going to be working on this project. We were presented with a number of graphs, and Louis, I know you're used to looking at those, but they meant nothing to me. Actually, that part of it was unintelligible to me, but the part that they seemed the most enthusiastic about was a survey that would be presented to the stakeholders. Part of the conversation was how that would be disseminated. And Steve had some excellent ideas and suggestions as to how the city agencies might be utilized for that, as well as publications in the newspaper and Nancy on Norwalk. And as I had suggested in our conversation that Steve picked up on as well, I think our contractors need to educate themselves a little bit better on the real estate market in Norwalk, because it's my humble opinion that industrial property values have now exceeded waterfront. So some of the concerns that they had, I'm not so sure are valid. But anyway, all in all, it was a pretty good meeting, and I was looking forward to seeing what comes next.
And Steve, I'll just mention, they said that they would be emailing us the slides. I haven't received them yet. If you can just remind them to send that out.
Yeah, when Richard stated that, I just shot them a quick email because I forgot to follow up as well. The charts they referred to were what they did some initial analysis of Norwalk's employment by business sector, and they broke it down to several categories. And then they compared Norwalk to Stamford, Danbury, and Connecticut, and I think there was one other municipality, and they kind of showed where our strengths and weaknesses were and some of the diversification. So that the colors in the charts were a little tricky to see.
Thank you. Thank you for getting me off the hook.
There is
It's so dark in your room there.
There's another study that's going to be firing up. The redevelopment agency is looking to hire a consultant for another look at the immediate railroad station area. And they've asked for participation of the zoning commission. As a South Norwalk resident, I've asked Michael to sit in on the hiring of the consultant. I believe the interviews are scheduled for a week from today, a 3-hour period next Thursday. Michael, did you get that information, including the proposals from the 3 consulting services?
No, I have not.
Okay, Steve, can you see that Michael gets that?
Yep.
Okay. And finally, at some point, the redevelopment agency is going to undertake the hiring of yet another consultant to look at the Webster Street lot. There have been plans for years looking at the possibility of wrapping Webster Street with some housing and decking the lot. And I don't know if that's what the redevelopment agency is currently looking at. But again, I'm wondering if another South Norwalk resident would be interested in being involved in that. And Josh, do you think you'd be interested in helping select a consultant and then working with the consultant and the redevelopment agency
Sure.
as our representative?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. I think that I will probably involve myself to the extent I have time available in both of those studies, because I have a long history in those areas of also conducting studies. So I actually have a little something to bring to the conversation. But you would be the zoning commission's representative there. I think finally, approval of the minutes of our previous meeting. Can we have a motion to approve them?
You leave the first time.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Frank made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, Joshua second. Let's do a quick roll call. Brian?
Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Rowena, nod your head.
Sorry, I abstain.
Mr. Witherspoon,
Yes.
Mr. Cantor,
Abstain.
Mr. Goldstein,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Abstain.
Mr. Mancini,
Approve.
Ms. Wells,
Approved.
Mr. Johnson.
Approved.
I think that's everyone.
Okay. Comments of the director. Steve, anything more?
No, I'm going to bow out and get in touch with Mr. Nate quickly. So.
You know, I still see Nate's name up here. I'm wondering if he's still online with us.
Let me. Not anymore.
Okay. Okay. Comments of commissioners? Okay, I'm going to need about 30 seconds myself to pour a glass of scotch. So we all now we'll sign off and come back on the other Zoom address that Steve has sent us. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, Galen moves. Second.
Second.
Okay, second from Stephanie. All those in favor, just raise your hands.
Second.
Everyone agrees.